Welcome to my latest Skyrim build on the legendary difficulty setting, the Bandit. As with all of my best builds, all the footage is on the legendary difficulty setting, and there will be an in-depth breakdown of the character in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and give the video a like if you want to see more like it. Without any more delay, let's get on to the build. The Bandit grew up with a travelling caravan, moving all around Tamriel and never knowing one place as home. Despite being a Khajiit, he felt no strong ties to elsewhere, and instead enjoyed the freedom that his life granted to him. As he grew older, he had to learn how to fight. Often their caravan had to fight off wild beasts or bandits, who sought their wares, but didn't want to spend the coin. Years spent fighting off these enemies caused the dark-furred Khajiit to become a powerful warrior. With a full suit of armour and a sword in each hand, he was a force to be reckoned with. Despite his combat prowess, the day eventually came when his group were attacked by a force strong enough to overwhelm them. The other Khajiits were felled at a rapid pace, but he was able to defend himself, killing two of the attacking bandits before fending off the others with defensive thrusts and minor wounds. Apparently the leader of the bandits seemed to feel that fighting him wasn't worthwhile, and instead granted him the offer to join up with them, laying the head of the merchant at his feet to emphasise his message. Realising that this was his only option, he reluctantly accepted. At first he had planned on escaping from the bandits as soon as an opening presented itself, but the chief seemed aware of his intentions, and never let him out of his sight. He would talk to the dark-furred warrior every night, and during the day would train with him to improve both their skills. The Khajiit would no doubt win in a fair fight, but the chief never fought fair. He taught the cat how to fight dirty, everything from stamping their opponent's toes to spitting in their eyes. Through his training, he learnt to not rely on just his sword skills to get him by, and began practicing with other weapons, ensuring he could fight with whatever he could lay his hands on. As the days and nights keep passing, the Khajiit begins to forget about his intention to escape, instead becoming an integrated part of a tribe, and even being seen by many as the second-hand man to the chief. This feeling of belonging meant that on the day the chief was struck down, he didn't seize the opportunity and escape, but instead charged in and cut down the man who had slain his leader, carving him into pieces with a flurry of attacks. They had been attacking a monk and his guards, but the Khajiit made sure to keep the monk alive, knowing that many of them had powerful magic at hand that could save lives. The other bandits were not happy with his decision, but none dared to challenge him. The Khajiit spoke to the monk, and told him that his life would only be spared if he could save the life of their chief. The pair were locked away at the bandits' hideout, and the Khajiit took charge of the tribe whilst their leader was incapacitated. Things carried on as they had before for a time, the bandits raiding and fighting for what they needed, but once the chief was healed, things changed. His first words to his men were of something called the Holy Light, and the riches that could be gained through living a life of purity. This did not go down well with the other men, and the Khajiit could see that they weren't happy with the decision he had made to spare the monk. They were out for blood, and the third warrior knew that it was a choice between him and the chief. He wasn't happy about it, but he wasn't going to let himself die so easily after fighting for so many years. Instead, he began a rebellion against the chief, letting the bandits attack the fortified room to their heart's content. He used the stalemate to begin planning how to best resolve the situation, but before he could work out what to do, he was alerted to the presence of a chief. The man had been going through the camp, slaying men with horrific efficiency. The bandits were no doubt expecting a fight, but the Khajiit decided to give the chief one chance to walk away. The man accepted, but decided he was taking the monk with him. Knowing that his actions would be seen as weakness, the Khajiit picked up a bow and tracked the pair from a distance, waiting for the right moment before letting an arrow fly loose and bury itself into the back of the monk. This went some way to keep the men happy, but their losses from the fighting had severely lowered their numbers, making it harder for them to overwhelm their targets. After a few failed raids, most of the bandits were dead or had left, leaving the Khajiit with nothing more than a handful of men. Cursing his luck, the new chief decided it was time to find a new hunting ground, travelling north until he reaches the border of Skyrim. His men die in the ambush, but he is able to survive the initial onslaught, instead being captured and sent to Helgen for execution. The main skills of this build are heavy armour, one-handed and speech. We're a close combat oriented build, so we need to be able to survive a lot of physical attacks. The heavy armour skill tree will not only help boost our armour rating, but the conditioning perk will also vastly improve our speed, removing one of the few drawbacks of the heavier armour type. In the one-handed skill tree, our main focus will be on the dual-wielding perks. Dual Flurry will increase the speed of our dual-wielding attacks, and Dual Savagery will increase the damage of our power attacks by 50%. As you can see in the video, this has a great effect, letting us cut down most enemies with ease. I added the speech skill to this build to let you more effectively play as a bandit. Normally you would do a bunch of quests or make potions to get your gold flow going, but for this build, I felt the focus should be entirely on looting and raiding, so you need to be able to make the most from everything you get your hands on. The additional skills of the build are Smithing, Archery, and Sneak. Smithing will help us reach the armour cap, but it will also significantly help improve our damage output. With a dual-wielding character such as this, it's vital that the base damage of our weapons are as high as possible, as we will be landing a lot of hits with every power attack we make. Archery is going to give us a way to deal ranged damage, and is particularly helpful for dealing with enemies we don't want to get too close to. This includes powerful melee enemies such as Dremora, as well as enemies with shields who can block our attacks. It may not be particularly fair or honourable to pick them off at range, but you're a bandit, you aren't supposed to be playing fair. The final skill for the build is Sneak. This mostly plays into the sneaky nature of the build, and will help us to steal stuff from others when we don't want to cause an all-out fight. It also does help out in combat though, as sneak attacks can be great for getting in a nice bit of early damage. When levelling as this build, you will want to try and split 50-50 between health and stamina, as you don't want to be taken down with ease, but you need a good supply of stamina in order to get plenty of power attacks in, especially near the start of the game. As a standing stone for the early levels of the build, I would suggest using the Steed Stone, as this will work similar to the conditioning perk in the heavy armour tree, and grant us extra carry capacity too, which is always nice. Once you do get the conditioning perk though, I would then suggest switching to the Atronach Stone for the 50% Magicka absorption, giving you an edge in fights against enemies who rely on magical attacks. I didn't use any powers whilst playing, but there are plenty that help complement the build. Any aggressive shouts can be a great help to the offensive power of the build, making you even stronger than what is shown here. With this build, you'll simply want the best one-handed weapons you can get your hands on. Ideally, one should be a sword and the other should be an axe or mace. We don't have enchanting as a skill for this build, so we will instead be focusing on whatever weapons we find when out and about. The armour for this build is a full set of steel armour. Try to go for the horned variant of a helmet if you can, as it provides a far better aesthetic for the build than the basic model does. Keep an eye out for enchanted pieces and improve them as best as you can in order to eventually reach the armour cap. I only was able to get my hands on one enchanted piece of armour and one enchanted weapon, so you will no doubt end up with a far better loadout than I did. The most important item for this build isn't a weapon or a piece of armour, but instead is a food item. I'm sure some of you will have sussed from the footage that I've been extensively using vegetable soup, and you should be too whilst playing this build. You want to have as much of it as you can carry, and I do mean that literally. In every fight you want to drink the stuff, and in really tough fights you may need to stack it multiple times. In addition, if you drink 10 of them one after another, you end up with infinite sprinting, letting you clear great distances with ease, ideal for making your escape if you get overwhelmed during a raid. You shouldn't join any factions with this build. The point is, you're a bandit. You don't belong to any organisation or group. You take what you want and kill anyone who tries to stop you. Obviously, this does have some drawbacks. The biggest of which were arguably from joining the Thieves Guild, as they give you access to fences and let you pay off guards for your crimes. However, thanks to the speech skill tree, we can overcome these obstacles. The right side of the tree will help us with bribing guards and passing speech checks, and the left side will let us turn certain merchants into fences to sell our stolen goods to once we have invested in their store. I actually really enjoyed doing this, as it varied up how I normally would go about playing, as I had to store all of my stolen loot until I was able to turn a shopkeeper into a fence, and I couldn't just make nearly unlimited gold at the start of a game. Try to get a powerful follower on your side, but make sure they're not too moral. I personally went with mercenaries, as they are just working for you for money instead of trying to uphold some ideal or particular purpose. Try to make your follower look like a bandit if you can, to help with the overall feel of the build. The key to successful combat with this build is to stagger your enemies with a flurry of fast power attacks. The key to being able to do this is to always have a huge supply of vegetable soup at your disposal, so that you have the ability to use infinite power attacks. This means you'll want to be constantly collecting all of the ingredients for it, as this is the most important item for the build, but it also runs out very easily whilst playing. I think I used around 50 vegetable soups just while trying to capture footage for the video, so you really do need a hell of a lot of it. To get into the role-playing of this build, you will want to focus your game time around looting and raiding areas, be they random locations you come across or even huge cities. Your goal is to get your hands on as much golden gear as you can, and you'll want to do whatever it takes to get them. This doesn't mean you constantly have to go on rampages and kill everyone around you to take their stuff. At times it will make more sense to use your sneak or speech skills to avoid an outright combat which you may well lose. The best loot in the world is worthless if you die whilst getting it. Overall though, just have fun with the build. I enjoyed it far more than I thought I would, and it offers a very different way to play than most builds do. Perfect for if you want a bit of a change or to make the game feel fresh. I hope that all of you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave behind a like if you did, as it helps the video perform better and lets me know what works well and what doesn't. If you're new here, then subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this in your feed in the future. And if you just want to watch more of my content right now, then feel free to click on one of the links or just have a browse through my channel.